is Moret. I'm an Orthodox Christian, and basically the question I had was directed basically to you and Cliff, which is you've talked about your stance on baptism and the Eucharist, and how you believe that they're just basically symbolic, outward professions and not as actually efficacious for salvation. And basically my critique, or my question really, is when we look at the extant records of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century Christians, all of them say that these are efficacious for salvation, that they're not just symbolic, that they have an actual deifying effect on the person that receives them. So I guess my question is, how can you say that you're following what the Bible says if your interpretation of the Bible is not lining up with the people that directly received the Bible and even compiled the canon of the New Testament as we know it?
If that's true, then what's the history of why so many millions upon millions don't think it's the case?
You could argue the same thing about why so many people don't believe in the gospel. I mean, that's just...
But who are the people? I want you to say the names, the church fathers, and who you're referring to on both sides of the fence.
Well, there's no both sides, because we don't have any records of anyone that believes it's
both. So you're saying it's later with Luther?
Not even with Luther, because Luther famously said he would rather drink blood with the Pope than...
So then how did it come about?
It came with Ulrich Zwingli and some of the radical reformers, which is like, 500 years ago? No.
What does it matter, the dating?
What it matters is if we're believing in Christianity as historically the faith that Christ gave to the apostles, you would expect to find any records of 1st century Christians that lived in the time of the apostles that would believe the beliefs you have, right?
My friend, during that time period, not everybody thought that literally Jesus was eating his own body and drinking his own blood whenever they took communion. Well, not every Christian did, I can promise you historically. You got to check your historical facts on that. The majority of the church fathers, you're exactly right. In terms of what they passed down, many of them did say that Jesus was actually in the bread and his blood was actually in the wine.
There aren't any records of anyone.
But to make that type of claim is just that's a huge stretch.
It's not a stretch, because every single one of the early church fathers say that it's actually his body, actually his blood. If you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, St. Paul even says that those who didn't examine themselves properly before partaking of the Lord's Supper could die. If it's just mere bread and wine, why is St. Paul saying it was killing Christians that didn't examine themselves properly before partaking?
Why did he say what?
He said because some of you have not examined yourselves and are partaking unworthily, he says, some of you are sick and some of you sleep. This is in 1 Corinthians 11, meaning they died. They died from partaking it unworthily. So if it's just mere bread and wine, why is St. Paul saying it's killing Christians?
Excellent question. Contextually, because people were not doing it in such a way that was obviously worthy and in a worshipful manner towards God.
Right, but
just like women, when they were called to wear head coverings,